What's up? What's up? Polo Sports Talking Entertainment. About to get into another one. I apologize for being a little late on this. Appreciate everybody pulling up right now, and we definitely gonna cook on this topic right here because this is something that I feel needs to be brought to the table. Now, regardless of what people want to think in terms of their perception and this imagination that they have that all the older players talking about like in the 50s, 60s, and in the 70s, all they used to do is play with cab drivers and firemen, things of that nature. That's not true, man. It's not true. And don't get me wrong, there were in terms of how players would uh would work regular jobs right after the season and stuff, because you got to think about what period of time the United States was going through during that time. You had several major events that had happened that made it hard for a lot of the NBA players. It wasn't just they didn't have the flexibility like now, and of course, uh, the technology wasn't the same, nowhere near the same like it was now. Uh, what's up with it, Memphis? I see you in the building. What's up with it, True Viking? I see you in the building. Um, JJ Reddick, man, is a player that it- he played for Duke, and while I respected his play, he had respectable play and everything. It's like he's gotten on mainstream TV as an analyst, and he's been talking out of his ass. Uh, he disrespected Bob Cousy, and saying all this stuff about these guys coming in here, you know, yeah, what's up with it, Von Ella? Not all Duke, not all Duke players are dickheads, man. But the thing about it is that he's sitting here saying that Bob Cousy was, um, he wasn't great, and then we have people that come to my channel that have disrespected the old school players and stuff, which I don't really take too I don't take too kindly of, because if it wasn't for those old school players, what's up with it, Stephen Green? I see you in the building. If it wasn't for the old school players, then the NBA wouldn't be where it's at now. And so you have to pay homage. You have to understand that there's a maturation process with everything. The NBA was just beginning. Did they have as many teams back in those days when Cousy played? No, they didn't. Did they play as many games? No. Did they were they shooting in a high percentage and all this other stuff? No. But you also have to put things in its proper context. Um, you know, whether they had, 8 teams or 17, you got to understand if when we're gone and when we leave this universe, you got to think about some of the things that they're going to be saying about this era. You got to think about what they were saying about the 90s era. You got to think about what they were saying about the 80s era, and so on and so forth. And everything evolves, with time. But the difference between me is that I've been able to appreciate, you know, the older, you know, uh, the older generation. Okay. Uh, let me give y'all some examples. Okay. Let me give y'all some examples because I think a lot of people get things uh, get things twisted. Okay. Um, a myth that I want to go ahead and I want to go debunk is that the the pace was it made it far less competitive and it was much easier for guys like Wilt Chamberlain or Bill Russell to dominate. That's not true. That's not true. Okay, and the pace was way faster, and there were a lot more shots taken, and it equated for more points for teams. Okay. Now, one prime example, for example, Wilt Chamberlain, he used to average 48.5 minutes per game. And I think this was in the 61, 62 season. And he averaged, that's the season he averaged 50. Okay. This was the fastest pace in NBA history. Okay. And it was also the highest average uh, point score per game mark in the 70 plus year timeline. Okay, we have to understand that, and it was a full 80 game season. So when all these people talk about, oh yeah, well they didn't play that many games and all this other stuff, they play 80 games back then. Okay, now that the games increase with time, but I mean that's one thing that people get twisted. It's like they look at those guys back in the days, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, those guys they played slow and all this other stuff." It wasn't like that because until you actually played yourself, and that's why like I tell a lot of guys to watch movies like Glory Road and movies that took place in the '60s because it was a whole different battle. There was several different battles, especially for African American players that they were faced with. Another thing, man, that I want to get out there too is that everybody just think that the Celtics were it was just the Celtics. It wasn't just the Celtics. It wasn't just the Celtics, okay? There were other teams there. You had the Lakers, you had the Philadelphia Warriors, and you also had the Saint Louis Hawks, who gave them their greatest, competition. And when you talk about guys that were playing amongst those teams, such as Wilt Chamberlain, such as Elgin Baylor, such as Bob Pettit, some of the other greats. They were giving Bill Russell and Bob Cousy and them other boys a run for their money. You know, uh, because I think Tuva was talking about Bob Pettit the other day. A lot of people y'all don't even know who guys like Bob Pettit and Paul Arizin and Nate Thurman was. But these guys could really, really play. But all y'all see is, oh yeah, well man, all we did was play against all they played against was cab drivers and firemen and plumbers, and that wasn't the case. Um and also both the amount of teams and the quality of the teams, they would compete with Boston's increased years past. So you had like guys like I think it was the Big O when he was with Cincinnati, and then you also had the West, the West and Elgin Baylor era, and so they were and during that time they were pushing them to do or die games, and then of course everybody everybody still talks about to this day in the year of '67. Um, Wilt Chamberlain had been combined with it was a supporting cast that was kind of similar to Bill Russell's Boston Celtics, and then we was finally able to get them. You remember that, Stephen? When we beat Boston during that time, and so everybody just think it was the Celtics. It was the Celtics. No, they were pretty much able to give the Celtics a run for the money. Some of those teams that I had talked about. Now we all know everybody else. They just talked about oh yeah, they're just being only 8 teams and all this other stuff. Look, I I understand what people are thinking, and if you go back and you do your you do your research, yeah, it might have been 8 teams in the league, and there were more great players that were piled on the rosters throughout that team, and the rosters and the magnitude of these specific teams, you had to know that having 8 teams in that league would have made it much harder than if it was 30 teams, because you got to think about it, right? You're playing in a playoff battle and you're playing in a series. Well, they're gonna know your moves. They're gonna know your you said Russell, Chamberlain, Lemon, Georgia White, and West opened the way for the NBA. Big up to the original Harlem Globetrotters. Yeah, but Steven, they weren't the only team though. They weren't the see that's the thing. They weren't the only team. That makes it sound like they were just pulled off the streets to play in an era. No, these guys were also. Yeah, exactly. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Listen, Kareem, and this was a little bit later, of course, but people got to understand that Kareem during that time, it was him and Wilt Chamberlain were the only guys that were able to come with the Alcindor rule and the Chamberlain rule. Okay, so but Stephen, there were other teams that gave them a run for their money too. Yes, they won 11 titles and everything, but you got to think of they were one of the teams that don't get enough credit in terms of ushering in a lot of stuff. Like the Celtics, and I allude to this point that Raw had made too. He had also stated that the Celtics, push to allow uh, were the first to draft the first African American player. And then on top of that, they were so far ahead of everything. When you talk about a guy like Red Auerbach and stuff, I mean, no wonder he wasn't just a coach. He was a genius in the way that he thought about things. Was he shrewd? Yeah, because that was what was portrayed in the Winning Time movie and stuff. The whole when he dropped the cigar in front of Jerry Buss in the forum and stuff like that. Man, that was true because these guys were competitors. Yeah, the Fort Wayne Pacers, the fast break style was invented, by yeah, yeah, exactly. And so, a lot of people, I get so, I don't know about y'all, I get so offended, and guys like myself and other guys in the LDBC, we're gonna stop you and we're gonna check it right then and there when you say something. Now we can understand if, let's say, you're playing ball right now and you might say something that's probably because of your lack of knowledge. But if you're just saying it just to be hateful or out of spite or something like that, then you really haven't done your research. Now this is another thing too. Everybody thinks that everybody was just white and no one was athletic, and that's not true. That's not true. Okay. um as a matter of fact, the first the first player to break the color barrier was an Asian point guard, and his name was Watura Masaka. Okay, in the second season, everybody thought that it was an African American. No, after that, then African Americans started to pour into the league. So people, see, let me stop there, right? So everybody's like, well, why did Yao Ming? Why did Yao Ming get a chance? Man, Yao Ming, he can't hoop and all this other stuff. See, y'all don't do your research. Now, look, I just sound this way, okay? Now, don't get it twisted. I could sit here and put the thinking cap on and get scientific and stuff like that. But there's no point when some of you already know this stuff, especially if you know about your franchises like the Los Angeles Lakers, or at that time the Minneapolis Lakers. If you know about the Philadelphia Warriors, the San Francisco Warriors, the Philadelphia 76ers, or the Syracuse Nationals and stuff like that. If you know about the Boston Celtics, if you know about the New York Knicks and stuff like that, then you'll truly know your history or whatever, because those are storied franchise. But I don't need to do that all the time. But they started to usher in African Americans during because at that time it was the BAA. It was the BAA. Yeah, but that came later. That came later, Stephen. That came later. We're talking about in the 50s. Okay. Um, Now then you had everybody's talking about, oh, they weren't white and all they were white and athletic or whatever. Well, in the 50s, there were several great black players who were able to showcase their talents before Wilt. Uh, Ray Felix, Bill Russell, Walter Dukes, Don Barksdale. Come on now. It wasn't just Wilt. It was Bill Russell, Oscar Robertson, Walt Bellamy, Hal Greer, who is the leading all-time scorer for us, Sam Jones, Wayne Embry, you know, and listen, none of these guys were white, but guess what? They were all stars. Bill Russell, was he trash? No. Oscar Robertson, was he trash? No. Or trash or white, whatever. And even some of the white players weren't trash. Elgin Baylor, was he trash? Hell no. Walt Bellamy, Willie Niles, Sam Jones, God rest his soul, Johnny Green. These guys weren't trash. These guys were not trash, and they were all stars. So all of this stuff, I'm debunking the bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Because all this perception about them not being able to be athletic. They were white. They were short. They were motherfucking goddamn trash men or milkmen or some bullshit like that. Man, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. And not only were guys competing against black players, um, listen, you still had competitive white motherfuckers out there too. I mean, a guy that always gets denounced is goddamn Bob Pettit and Jerry West. Okay, they might have not been jumping out the gym and none of that other stuff, but they still had good good shooting ability. They more importantly they had toughness, and they have good playmaking ability too. More and you're talking about the one of the pretty much the fastest pace. So everybody's talking about, oh yeah, they were playing against a number of milkmen and trash men and plumbers and all that other stuff. Man, that stuff ain't true. And this is another thing too. A lot of guys always talk about, oh yeah, man, these guys were short. They were short back in the days and all this other stuff. Come on, man. Come on. Were you living during that time? So you wouldn't know. Everybody just think that these guys were playing against guys that were 4'11". Yeah, we know that. I know one of the guys too, Stephen Green. Go look at my videos, man. Go look at my videos in the back. Yeah, in 1966. Yeah, yeah. I know one of the guys. Matter of fact, I know both of his sons. A guy by the name of Willie Cager. Personal friend of the family. He said the black players in those days had to perform the best to make the team because there wasn't a lot of options. Yeah, that's true. And then also, what you also have to realize too, Stephen, is that they would only allow a certain amount of black players to play on the team too as well. Hold on 1 minute. All right, sorry about that, y'all. All right, look. Another thing is, and another uh, perception that a lot of people have is that all there was short players. Um, the modern the modern day measurements have been notorious for being unreliable. Okay, let's get that out of there. Okay, players are measured. They're measured in their sneakers as opposed to being on their feet, and so a couple of inches are given to a lot of these players. Like for example, Kevin Love is not no 6'10", but they got him listed as that. We know that, right? Like Mike Beasley. They got him listed at a higher height. They even listed guys like AI at a higher height, right? But we can't always sit up here and say, okay, yeah, these players are bigger, they're taller, and all this other stuff. Back in those days, players were measured without their shoes, and they were rounding their heights were rounded down, which means that uh, if a player like, let's say, Dwight Howard was to be measured and everything, he ain't gonna be no 6'11". He Wilt Chamberlain without shoes, I think, was 7 foot, just straight 7 foot. And a lot of people got to realize that Dwight Howard is like 6'9". You understand what I'm saying? And then guys like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think without shoes, to my knowledge, I think was 7'1" or something like that. You know, barefoot. Wilt Chamberlain is the same height as Rudy Gobert. You know, and this is really gonna trip you out too, right? Shaq, and I know y'all gonna trip out, man. Shaq is always looked at as the most powerful, dominant force, biggest, scariest guy. Shaq came out and said that, man, without shoes, he's 6'11". He's 6'11", man. So, like, these guys that actually stand like 7 foot, man, uh, like Wilt and Kareem and some of the other, like Artis Gilmore, some of these other guys, only guys that you can really compare them to are guys like Rudy Gobert, maybe Kristaps Porzingis, who's not 7'3", he's really 7'1". Boban, who's really 7'2", and something just to name a few or whatever. And Bill Russell, he is a legitimate 6'9". Elvin Hayes, he was 6'9". Jerry Lucas, he was 6'9". Dave Cowens, he was 6'9". You know what I'm saying? But Tristan Thompson is really, a lot of people gonna trip out. Tristan Thompson is really 6'7.5" without shoes. Montrezl Harrell is really 6'7" without shoes. But all y'all saying, oh no, man, these players are short. Those players are short, man. You got to go back and you got to go really do your knowledge, man, or really, dig in and do your research. Yeah, Willie Cage had a heart problem. Yeah, 6'11" is still big though. Yeah, it is. I mean, nah, yeah, Vaughn, that's facts. And we got to talk about your team because Vaughn, you a Chicago fan, right? Because I'm about to go ahead and get up out of here. The game about to come on. Who y'all got, man? I just wanted to talk to y'all for a little bit, man. I got some things coming. Steven, what we talked about a while back. It's in the works right now, buddy. You know what we was talking about, man, in terms of the fitness and everything. What's up with it, Jason Burke? I see you in the building. Who y'all got? Yeah, listen, we got to talk about your team, man. Brian, we got to talk about your squad. Shot Town. I'm gonna get on them later. Everybody been reporting it. And look, all of them was right. You know who been reporting it? I know the first one who did report it, man. They ain't giving that guy props. But you got Dallas tonight, huh? We'll see what happens, man. Miami looking like they're ready to go to the finals, man. Shoot. Miami looking like they're ready to go to the finals. They said they want to run it back. Yeah, we got to talk about your boy, Levine. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Man, listen. I'm gonna give you a little snippet right now. I'm gonna give you a little preview right now. What I'm gonna tell you right now is we already know what the elephant in the room is and what the problem needs to be dispelled. It's Billy Donovan. It ain't got nothing to do with Levine. Got to look at the future of what's going on with Lonzo Ball. You know what I'm saying, and his health situation. We got to look at about getting y'all another big man like the boy Luda Ryder said way back. You know what I'm saying? You know, got to see what happens with them. Got to see what takes place. But I'm gonna get on that later. That's just a little preview though. But I appreciate y'all pulling up, man. And my brand, pretty much, call it that, but really just to educate some of y'all about the old school players because they don't get appreciated. A lot of people they look at these black and white films and stuff like that, but you never were in that time period to know you never played. You weren't running, you weren't wearing the shoes, you weren't going to struggle, you weren't playing in those small areas, you weren't the one having to deal with racism, you weren't the one being having stuff thrown at you, you know what I'm saying? You weren't going through segregation and racism during that time, which is racism still exists, regardless of what that motherfucker AB said, or he said, yeah, we gotta talk about that. Hey, but I appreciate everybody pulling up. Make sure y'all like the video, share,